On today's episode, we have Frank Rich here to have a discussion with me about the dangers of porn addiction and how to reboot your brain to overcome and live a free life. I'm Adam Vibe Gutton, and this is the Recovered on Purpose show. The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live Recovered on Purpose. Today's episode is sponsored by Recovered on Purpose. Recovered on Purpose was founded with the vision of raising up an army of recovered addicts to tell their stories in powerful and impactful ways to free others suffering from the bondage of addiction, as well as tell our stories in the school system to deter the future generations going down the path of addiction. If this is a movement that you want to get behind or you possibly want to be interviewed for this show, go to recoveredonpurpose.com/contact and tell me a little bit about yourself. All right, guys, so Frank Rich is a former bodybuilder, a certified men's health and addiction recovery coach, founder of Rebuilt Recovery, and host of the Superhuman Life podcast. Guys, I'm so excited to have him on here. This is a topic that we don't talk a lot about in the recovery sphere when we're talking about drug addiction and alcoholism and everything. This isn't a topic that we talk a whole lot about. But being free of this myself and having these struggles myself in the past, I've noticed such a significant difference in so many areas of my life that I want to talk about this and have you guys know the dangers of this. So Frank, tell me a little bit about why it is that you do what you do, kind of what's been going on and why it is that you started all these things around helping men get rid of the bondage of porn addiction.
Absolutely, man. And first off, Adam, I'm just incredibly grateful to be here with you today. I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And I mean, I'm behind you 100% of the way. And yeah, it's unfortunately, we don't hear a lot about this topic in the addiction world and in the church world, which I think we'll probably get to this down the road. And I think for me, I'll get to what led me here. But a problem that we see here, it's the addiction to pornography leads to some of these other addictions. When we think about understanding that a man that's struggling with this type of compulsive behavior or this addiction, he's leading a private life. He's living in guilt. He's living in shame. And where does this guy go to mask these emotions, to mask these feelings of insecurity, to mask these feelings of guilt and shame? He's going to seek out alternative means to really push those down. Where I'm getting to is alcohol, drugs. So I see a lot of men, maybe weren't down the path leading them to drug or alcoholism, but because they've been hooked on porn and they're living in this cycle of guilt and shame, that ultimately it leads them to much more darker places. So that's why I'm so encouraged by what you're doing and just incredibly grateful to be able to speak and share to your audience. But yeah, I think to answer your question, why do I do what I do? Because I had this conversation multiple times a day. Like my mission in 2021, my one word is alignment. I do not plan on any person meeting me, whether it's at the convenience store, grocery store, gym, or just walking down the street. If you're going to have more than a 2-minute conversation, you're going to know who I am and what I do and what my mission here is in the world. Yeah. And my mission is to help men break free from porn addiction through the power of faith and fitness. So ultimately, it has been a result of my own story and my own transformation. I struggled for close to 2 decades with porn. And in surrendering my life to Christ and walking, fully with God, I was able to really kind of start to unpack. And, I never classified myself as a drug or alcoholic, but I definitely had some struggles on that side as well. So I was able to get that out. And then in February 2019, just 2 years ago, I made the decision I was going to remove porn. And it was February 14th. And since that day, first of all, it started with just sharing it. I think what most men need to realize, if you're truly struggling with this compulsive behavior or this addiction, your first step is just find somebody that you can have a conversation with. Find somebody that you can entrust in and you feel safe with, and then open up your heart. So this was the early process for me. I started with my very, very close friends, but because of the way they responded to me, and once I got it out the first time, once I was able to talk to somebody else about it and not have them guilt me, not have them shame me, not have them look at me and say, dude, man up, you're a guy, you're supposed to watch porn. That was not the case. And I think that's where a lot of men struggle. It's thinking like, if I
let's pause really quick Because what I'm hearing is that something was going on at that time. What were you noticing in your life that made you actually want to stop? Because a lot of people don't necessarily understand the dangers of it, don't understand what's actually going on. So before you started reaching out to those people, because I know, guys, there's literally like if you're watching porn, whether you like it or not, you're supporting things like sex trafficking. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in that world that are happening with the people in those videos that we don't even think about. But then there's things that are happening to our minds, that are happening to our souls. So why is it that you actually started wanting to quit? What were you noticing in your life around that time that made you want to stop and start reaching out to people?
That's a great question, and yeah, I hope we actually get to the point where we're talking about some of the trafficking and how the industries feed each other. For me, it's hard to say if there was a clear like you're struggling and this is why, because for me, I struggled with depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts really my entire life. I mean, going back to my teenage years, and I do come from a family that has struggled with depression and suicide. Going back 4 generations of men in my family had taken their life. So I think when I was living through this in my teenage and early 20s, I just thought that this is how I was made. I didn't have a relationship with Christ at that time. But I just thought that part of a broken family. This is, we're the unhappy people. That was in my mind how I was brought up. It's like, oh, we're just the unhappy people. We're going to be depressed, and we're going to talk about committing suicide, but never actually take the step. So it's hard to say, like, in the early stages, like, was there anything really, really clear? What for me was a big part, it was my faith. It was when I decided that I was going all in on my faith. I had to change of heart. I had the conviction that I needed to do it. And then what really changed it is when I started to look and do some of the research on the brain. So I'm a fitness guy. I've studied health. I understand the body. And this has been my life's work up until, these last couple of years, was helping people build their bodies. So looking at it from a scientific perspective, when I started to kind of do some of the research, and one talk in particular was Gary Wilson's talk, Your Brain on Porn. It's an incredible book, very eye-opening. But when I realized that literally what I'd been consuming, what I'd been allowing to go into my brain through my eyes was literally changing the chemistry of my brain. When I first heard that, I said, okay, this is something that is major. Can this actually be the link to your unhappiness? Can this be the link to your depression? Can this be the link to why every time you look at a woman, instantly you put her in a position from a video that you'd seen the day before? And that's not women. They're not here as sexual objects. So for me, it was a combination of a series of things. But when I really uncovered what was happening in my brain, I mean, you guys are looking behind me, like I've lived a life of peak performance, or at least I thought I was, been chasing performing and living at an optimal level since I was 20 years old. And knowing that what I was allowing to go into my brain was holding me back from truly stepping into peak performance, peak brain performance, I needed to go deeper and study it. But I had to start with getting out of my life. So I hope I answered your question there. It was a series of events, but really once I got my head wrapped around what was damaging to my brain, I then knew that I had to take that control.
Yeah. For myself, the last time that I actually consumed, I'm not proud of this, and it's something like I can't actually believe that I'm about to say this publicly. But the last video I watched, it was I don't know how I found it. It was on freaking Pornhub, and it was a rape video, bro. Like, it was a straight up, like, I was like, wait, this isn't acting. Like, this is not acting. And right after that, we actually have a mutual mentor that I actually hit up like right after. Was like, dude, this is what I just saw. I'm destroyed right now. I can't believe this just happened. I don't want this in my life whatsoever, ever again. And what I noticed, it was also taking away a creative part of me. Like, it was taking away my ability to make things real in my life, like make these dreams real. And I've found that porn actually makes it so that we're living in this fantasy world that doesn't do anything for us, and it makes it so that nothing becomes real for us anymore. So have you heard of that, and did you experience that at all with not being able to create the way that you're supposed to create?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm going to answer that. But first off, brother, I'm so glad you brought up that video that you watched. I'm sure the majority of the listeners here in the last month or so have seen the media coverage. I mean, it got New York Times, it got Fox News, it got CNN. 10 plus million videos were taken down from Pornhub's site. We knew they were there. We knew that what you were watching had been out on the web and anybody could view it. So the way that Pornhub used to work is literally anybody could go. There was no age verification. There's no verification of consent. Anybody could upload a video. It wasn't until Visa and MasterCard decided to pull their payment processing from Pornhub that Pornhub decided that they needed to take down every unverified video that's ever been uploaded. This was over 10 million videos. Now, at that point, Pornhub had just over 12 million videos on their platform. So that means 10 million of the 12 million were unverified, could have been rape, could have been abuse, could have been trafficking, could have been any of these other acts of crime of humanity, against humanity. So when people talk about I'm anti-trafficking, sex trafficking, it's the strongest force of evil in the world, yet I'm going to go watch over here and consume porn and enjoy it, realizing you cannot morally say that I'm against this and for this, because one fuels the other and the other is the demand for the other. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed. And if people are looking for more resources, we've done 2 episodes on the Superhuman Life. Selfish plug here, go check them out. One dropped here just this past week.
And guys, it actually is, I just thought of this, but January is actually Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So we're actually literally doing an episode right now for this awareness. And guys, what I also noticed when I was struggling with this myself, and when I was addicted to drugs, like this wasn't even a thing. I didn't even like think about it being wrong. Didn't even like care really. But after when I got clean, I started recognizing like how many things, and when I obviously gave my life to Christ, I started recognizing how many other things I needed to rebuild. And what I noticed about this specific thing is that I never ever felt good about myself before, during, or after this. Like when I was consuming this kind of thing, when I was addicted to this, it never did anything positive for my life. It just didn't. So guys, we're actually going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about more on how we're going to be able to get freed from this bondage, how we're going to move into a new life free of porn. See you in a second. All right, guys, today's episode is brought to you by Recovered on Purpose. I am looking for some people just like you that want to tell their story on this platform. It'll be on the Recovered on Purpose show, and we're also going to be doing different meetings and things on this page. So if that's you, if you want to tell your story, if you want to learn more about how to tell your story, go to recoveredonpurpose.com/contact. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And guys, don't forget to subscribe at the bottom of recoveredonpurpose.com, and I give you a free copy of the digital and audio book of From Chains to Saved, and you can see exactly what it looks like for your story to be in your very own book. We'll see you in a second. All right, everyone, welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the dangers of porn addiction and all of the things that have happened in the industry and how many things have been, like, people that have been harmed. Like literally 10 million videos were taken off of Pornhub because they were unverified. And guys, we were getting into the creativity that gets stolen by watching porn and the fantasy world that it creates in the mind and the way that it makes the mind think. So Frank, have you actually experienced this yourself in the creativity being stolen from you?
Yeah, I was a classic never get anything done person for my entire life. But you said something right before we went to the break about how when you were, really in the depths of your addiction or really struggling with some of the compulsion behaviors around it, that you lacked finding joy anywhere else in life outside of, not that you were even getting joy from consuming and watching porn, but I think the joy piece and the happiness in life is directly tied into the creativity. So I shared a quote on my Instagram, probably going back a few months now, that porn is the ultimate weapon of instant gratification, destroying today's men. So if we kind of just dissect that down, like we think about like what are we going to porn for? What are we seeking out when we're escaping reality? I did a video where I talked about why you're escaping reality, but what are we going there for? We're going there for because what is happening in our real life, we're trying to run from, whether it's stress, anxiety, the loss of a relationship, rejection, loss of a job. I mean, all of these feelings of unhappiness, we're trying to run away from them and seek out pleasure, seek out gratification instantly. Now, here's where the problem, we talked about there being 12 million plus videos at one point. Now there's over 2 million. But think about how long it would take for you to literally watch every single video. Our brains are not wired for that level of stimulus that often. Like you can literally sit there for hours and hours and hours. And porn is what's known as a supernormal stimulus. The way that your brain responds to it and the firing that takes place from a visual tube site pornography. I'm not talking like Playboy magazines or any of the old stuff that maybe some of our parents were. I'm talking about what we're struggling with in today's world. The infinite, endless supply of graphic, hardcore material. Graphic, hardcore. Our brains are not equipped for that. So literally, first or second consumption, it starts to change the reward system in your brain. It starts to change the way that signals are fired, your pleasure chemicals, your dopamine. It's literally tweaking and changing where you're going to get the release, where you're going to release the chemicals from. So that's why the only place you're going to get dopamine, if you're struggling with this, is going to be in porn and nothing else in the outside world. The things that were created to bring us joy, to bring us happiness, none of that is going to work because you've programmed yourself to only seek that stimulus from pornography. So yeah,
now, is there going to be a freedom from that? Because I know a lot of people talk about like our brains are fully developed by the time we're 25, and they were doing studies on it and stuff. And I know that something new came out. But for someone that is hearing you talk about this, is there freedom on the other side? Is there a way to rewire their brains so that they are able to enjoy things other than this porn addiction?
Absolutely. So yeah, the male brain develops until the age of 28. I think the female brain is somewhere between the ages of 23 and 24. That's full adult development. Now that doesn't stop the development of your brains. There's a term in neuroscience known as neuroplasticity. And all neuroplasticity, or your brain being plastic, means, all that means is literally it can change until the day that we're taken off of this planet. I spoke to a neuroscientist who works in the same space that I do. I've had her on the show a couple times, but in the first talk, she talked about a man that she was working with, not in her porn addiction practice, because she has an entire practice that helps people rewire their brains. This guy, I believe he had been struggling with a stroke and she needed to help him, but he was in his 80s and they were doing analysis with technology that they were seeing changes taking place in his brain into his 80s. So absolutely, yes, there is freedom on the other side. And here's when you know it's happened, because your brain is actually your eyes are a part of your brain. They're not attached. Your eyes are actually an extension of your brain. So when you rewire to your brain, the world that you see changes. And I'm sure, Adam, you can speak to this. Yeah. Like you don't look at an elephant and see a cow. That's not what I mean when I say things change. It's colors appear lighter, colors appear much stronger, colors appear much brighter. So you will, in fact, change your brain, and it will change the way you see the world.
100%. And I recognize that when I got clean and sober off of drugs, I literally was able to witness as my vision changed from this like shadowy, like gray area, like this darkness that was consistently in my view, to being able to see colors again, to be able to like, and I think that our eyes are attached to a different emotional response also. When we see someone or we see something, because it's a connection to our brain, our eyes are telling our brain, like, we love that person, or we love to watch football or whatever it is. We're able to rewire our brains that way. So I love that, brother. I love that. So how is somebody that is struggling with this, what is going to be, I know that you were talking about reaching out to people, but what else can they do themselves in order to get free from this and to move on to the other side?
Yeah, well, I guess it's really going to depend on, where's the guy at, in his journey. I think the first step of freedom, the first step of recovery, whether it's pornography, drugs, alcohol, gambling, shopping, whatever it is you first got to decide that you're ready and make that decision and make that commitment to yourself, and I advise committing it to somebody else as well. Could be a coach, could be a pastor, could be a therapist, could be a best friend. Should it be your spouse? Should it be your partner? It should be somebody else. But I think in handing that commitment over to somebody else, you've now recruited yourself some accountability. Somebody that's, and this is why the person needs to be somebody that you can trust, because I think they need to come on the same side of the table as you and walk this journey along with you. But I think it starts with deciding that you're ready to change and fully committing to it, and then passing that commitment on to somebody else. Now, from there, I think it's going to go through a couple different phases. The first thing, if you're really going to change your life, is you got to get clear on what needs to be changing. Like with the work that we do here at Rebuild Recovery, yeah, we're aiming to remove porn from our men's lives, but if we just focus on removing the porn and we didn't focus on building him up, there's a reason why the company is called Rebuild Recovery, because we're rebuilding men's lives. But if we don't identify the problems in which porn has negatively impacted it, we then can't build a proactive plan to get us out of it. So I think it starts with making the decision and commitment to yourself, recruiting some accountability, and then looking at the areas in which the negative impact has taken place. Once you've identified, okay, my consumption of porn is holding me back from actually getting the job that I want, then you get clear on building a plan to build yourself up, acquire the skills you need to move up in your company, get a plan to start the business that you're ready to launch. So you got to have a plan to move forward to get out of it. But before you build the plan, you got to know where the negative impacts have actually taken place.
Yeah, I love that. And something that's people might not like connect without knowing it. Like if you're a single guy out there and you're trying to think, well, this isn't affecting me negatively, like the thing is you're not able to connect with a female in order to find a relationship. You won't be able to look at them the correct way. Like there's so many things that that you might not notice it's impacting without like really thinking about what this is doing. Because the amount of time that you could be consuming this or like could be spent other ways. But there's so many things that this is doing to your mind and doing to your relationships that you really have to think about. So Frank, so then when they figure out what areas it's attached to and which areas it's causing harm in, what do they do next? How can they rebuild or reboot their life?
Yeah, so you've identified the areas in which it's been negatively impacted. Then you got to build a vision, build a plan for your life. And none of this, what I'm going to share here, is ultimately groundbreaking from an addiction standpoint. This is a success principle in life. Like, you want to succeed at something, you got to build a plan to get you there. I think most men that are struggling with this type of problem, their life is not going well in many places. Like, it's not just the porn is the problem. There's a lot of other things. So we need to get clear on, what is this guy trying to create in his life? Who is the man that he was created to be? Who is the man that he is trying to become? Not like a recipe formula. Yeah, we have a curriculum, but the curriculum is something that's going to guide you in building the plan for your life. But there's the unwiring of old patterns. So when we talk about the brain and we talk about rebooting or rewiring, the first thing we need to do is we need to unwire those old habits, realizing that through consumption, through all of this addiction, we've literally built a neural pathway that needs this. It almost happens unconsciously. So many men that I talk to, like, they call me or we have a conversation, they're like, yeah, without me even realizing it, I stopped work at midday and I spent 4 hours consuming porn. Without him even realizing it, you spent 4 hours consuming porn. That's because there's been an unconscious habit wired into your brain. So the first step is you have to unwire that. Okay, so that's removing porn. Okay, that's the easy part. It's like, I'm just going to decide to not watch porn. That's going to unwire it. Then you have to rewire. And rewire is you have to build things to find joy. You have to build things to find pleasure in life. So most men struggling with this type of addiction, they don't have hobbies. They don't have other activities. They don't have things that they're doing in life that are moving them forward. So build some things that you can proactively move towards. And I think for most men, it's build a plan for your relationships, build a plan for your fitness, build a plan for your finance, build a plan for your family. But it's got to be an individualized plan that I can wake up every day and be excited for. If I know tomorrow that my day is stacked from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with activities that I love, that I enjoy, with activities that are moving me closer towards becoming the man that I was created to be, is there even a place for me to stop and watch porn?
Right.
No. So I have to build such a plan moving forward. I have to build a life worth living to where porn no longer has an entry point for it.
Right. And I love that. And the next thing after making a plan, and this is something that I've learned by planning a whole bunch of things in my life, the next thing is that you have to take the action. Like you have to make the plan. You have to say what this hobby is that you want to do. You have to say, I want to write this book. You have to say that I want to start this podcast. You have to say that I want to go skydiving, but then you have to go do it. And the thing is like the rewards that I have gotten from writing this book, the reward I had when I jumped out of that airplane, the reward I've had from speaking and doing these shows and things, and the people that have reached out to me is exceedingly abundantly, exponentially bigger than anything that could have been rewarded to me from any kind of porn consumption. So guys, I want to thank Frank for being here, and bro, it's.
Can I real quick just add one piece to that, because
Please.
What you said is so extremely valuable. Yes, a plan is only as good as the next step that's been taken. But here's what we know about dopamine and how the brain works. The dopamine is not released. So realize, like, our goal here, when we talk about rewiring and rebuilding, what we're trying to do is we're trying to reset that dopamine center. We're trying to reset that reward center. Most people think dopamine is released when I get the goal. So if I make a plan to follow Adam's course here and write the book that the world needs me to write right now, if I do that, the dopamine isn't released when the book is done. The dopamine is released when I actually sit down to do the writing. Dopamine is a chemical that you get when you're in pursuit of the goal. So just because you haven't figured out how to write the book, just because you haven't figured out how to start the business, that should not stop you from getting started, because it's actually in taking the steps that you're going to reset and rebuild your brain and your body.
That's so good. Thank you for adding that in. And guys, obviously, this is something that you all can jump on right now. Whether you struggle with porn or not, if you've made it this far in the show, build something in your life. Like start creating those new dopamine levels, those new dopamine hits from a natural life giving habit, a new hobby, something that you want to do. Guys, there's so many things in this life to get attached to get healthy with. And we love you so much, Frank. Thank you so much for being here and serving the community here at Recovered on Purpose. Guys, we will see you next week, and we love you so much. See ya. The black represents the darkness from which we came. The white represents the light in which we now live. And the red represents the passion it takes to live recovered on purpose.